If you're running meta ads, probably one of the biggest issues you're having right now is getting more cash collected on all of your sales calls. Have a lot of payment plans internally to you and your team, and it's struggling to get the money from them and struggling to get more than just a couple $100 on every single call. I'm going to go over the exact strategy I'm utilizing for all of my clients right now in order to get more cash collected on every single sales call. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. Going into collecting more cash, really what you can look at this is the pre-qualification process has a lot to do with this. One of the easiest ways and most basic ways to just get more cash collected on every single one of your sales calls is utilizing a pre-qualification process, and specifically conditional logic. So conditional logic, for people that don't know, is basically saying, like, if somebody does X, do this, right? So the best way to do this is utilizing either the conditional logic inside the instant forms on Facebook. So instant forms now has a place where you can basically tab on conditional logic, and based upon the way people answer those questions, the revenue that they're doing, whatever their budget is, you can add in, say, hey, if somebody fills in X, do this, right? They don't qualify. But more specifically and what I like to do is I like to use a grading and scoring system. Now, you can't necessarily do this in Meta. You would have to push them to a website. My recommendation is utilizing Go High Level. But what you can do is you can have somebody go through a form or a quiz and have them fill out that form. And based upon the questions, they're given a certain score on each one of those questions. So say, for example, if I say that I'm doing $50,000 a month in gross revenue, I get 2 points. If I said that I do $0 a month in gross revenue, I get 0 points. So as they answer all these questions, there's a score associated with each answer. So what happens is you can say, hey, if the quiz grade, overall grade, is a 5, send them to a closer calendar. If the overall grade is below a 5, send them to a setter calendar. So that way they have to get pre-qualified before they end up on a closer calendar. Now, people obviously will lie on this, and we'll kind of go over some strategies in order to avoid sending those people still to a closer calendar. But this way, what you can do is you're only sending people that are pre-qualified over there. And when your appointment setters are calling people up that maybe no-showed, maybe they didn't actually book an appointment, maybe they only submitted a form, they can prioritize higher scores than lower scores, because the higher scores represent somebody that's closer or a better buyer than what we're looking for. Another little trick you can do is you can basically utilize the Facebook API to only fire when somebody scores a grade of over 4 or 5, right, or 6, or whatever the case is. That way, Facebook knows that it's doing a good thing. Every time that they send you a high quality lead, that's when the API fires. Not when somebody books on the appointment setter's calendar, but when somebody books on the closer's calendar. Another option is to utilize a qualifier to get credit score, income, and credit limits. Best ones to use right now is Fanbasis. I also utilize ClickRabbit as well. Basically, what they'll do is when somebody fills out a form, they'll grab that information from that person utilizing their first name, last name, phone number, and email in order to get that information. Now, once that information comes in, it's usually almost immediate. It does cost anywhere between 30 cents to $1 to extract that information. In some cases, it can be upwards of $1.50 to $2 in order to extract that information. Once that information is extracted, it immediately comes. So like when they fill out that opt-in form or whatever, it's immediately applied to them. So what you can do is you can run this coincide with your conditional logic format, saying like, okay, their score needs to be above a 4 or 5, and they also need to have a credit score of over 650 or a credit limit over X amount, or they need to be doing income-wise over $5,000, whatever the case is. And so what you can do now is you can get even much more refined, retuned, the quality of person that's ending up on your closer calendar, especially if you notice that people are just lying and they come on a closer calendar and they're not making anything, but they said that they were making $8,000, $6,000 or whatever the case is. These are like the most simple systems. Fanbases, I think, cost a couple $1,000s in order to integrate it in, but it integrates directly with Go High Level. ClickRabbit is a little bit newer of a company, much cheaper to utilize with it, but they also have an integration system, but they utilize Zapier in order to integrate over, but you still can get it back instantaneously. Another thing that we've noticed is also just having our closers and appointment setters just reach out. If you have just closers, just have a closer do it. If you have appointment setters, have the appointment setters do it. But have them introduce themselves and basically set expectations for the call. This is where they can start asking questions. Humans, we're not inherently have a hard time lying multiple times. So, and especially to somebody on the phone. So if they maybe filled out something earlier on that form that wasn't true, this is your opportunity to basically get it out of them. And then this is also just going to help your show rate in addition, because it has that human connection. So if you're also struggling with show rates, not only will this pre-qualification help with show rates naturally, but it's also going to help with the show rates because people are inherently not going to necessarily no-show when they built a relationship with somebody. It's much more unlikely that they would. The other option, and this is something like that you would do obviously on a sales call, is increasing your financing options. I'm going to go through like all the financing options I've used, but more specifically for these financing options, it also depends on what you're doing, because some of these financing options won't work if you're doing something less than $100,000 a month in sales, gross revenue. So some of these will not apply if you're a much smaller company, but I do have options that you can use if you're a company that's doing less than $100,000 a month. So for example, the first one up here are the 0% credit cards. You can utilize these no matter what business you are. The Wells Fargo, Amex, and Discover card, if you literally go on their websites and just type in Wells Fargo 21-month 0% interest card, it will automatically be the first link that pops up. You can send these to your clients. Usually they need at least a 650 credit score or higher to qualify for any of these cards. But these are great to use if you have no financing options available, especially if you're having an issue getting PIFs or people just like you don't have any options besides maybe an in-house payment plan. This is a great way just to bypass it, especially if the leads that you're already getting are very high quality. They've got good credit score. They've got a good debt to income ratio. These credit cards are super easy and it's 0% interest. So it's basically like they're paying an in-house payment plan, but you're not responsible. You're still getting it as a PIF. And there's no fees besides the fee that they would pay through like Stripe or however you're taking your payments. Other option is utilizing WAMP and Fanbases. They have a payment system that has a lot of, buy now, pay laters with Klarna, Afterpay. It's not on here, but PayPal's on there, Split It, and Affirm. Now, one thing you have to understand is they will usually take about a 15% cut off the top. So say, if somebody gives you $100, they're going to take $15 off of that. These are really good options, especially, again, you're going to want people in those higher echelons of credit. I know some of these also focus more so on debt to income ratio more than they're looking at credit score. But these are also very good options, especially if you have a lower quality clientele. Usually I see people get approved for these before they get approved for these. These are a little bit harder to get approved for, but this is another great way that I think even Klarna has options to go out as to get funding up to $10,000 up to, I believe, 24 months plus. Affirm is a little bit harder. They sometimes are not working with high ticket coaches right now, but if you're another company, for a lot of these, you can utilize these for a lot of companies, but some of them are more particular with high ticket coaches. But for all of these, you should get approved for high ticket coaches. Other options is basically just bringing on a third party financing company. I've used Coach Financing in the past. It's pretty easy to get approved with them. You don't really have to have much history. They basically, you can kind of think of them as like a third party. They're going to charge you $250 to give you a software. It's called FlexBuy. And then your people are going to have like a soft credit pool and they're going to see a bunch of personal loans that they qualify for. And, the loans are sometimes incredibly long, very low payments, low interest. Now, the issue is with Coach Financing, it is a bank to consumer. So you're not going to get the money directly. The money is going to go to the consumer and then you have to draft that from the consumer. It is a little bit more of a pain in the neck process. Granted, they are providing a very, very low fee compared to some of the other financing partners we're going to go over. But again, if you're a smaller company and you're just trying to get more cash collected on calls, super easy, very cheap to get this implemented. Special Financing LLC, I call this one more like the greasy ones out of all of these. So Special Financing, the great part about them is they can get approval for people that are in the Tier 4, Tier 5 program. So basically people that have very, very bad credit scores and very bad debt to income. They will approve anybody for a loan. Now, which tier they fall on depends on how much cash collected you're getting out, where the lowest cash collected you receive up front is 30% of the total amount. Yes, it doesn't sound great, but if you can receive 30% of a $10,000 program instead of breaking it up over 12 months, it's not that bad, right? When it really comes down to it. So their fees do range quite drastically. And then they have a 60-day recourse. So if somebody fails to pay, then they have 60 days to basically recoup the funds that they had given you in advance. Once those 60 days have transpired, those funds are basically locked for you. So that way you don't have to worry about those funds getting, clawed back. Another option, and you probably have seen this before, is Shy-Fi. Shy-Fi is also really good. They do 60-month loans, which is awesome, and they have very low APRs compared to Special Financing. They also have a Tier 4, Tier 5 program. They do cost $1,000 start. SFC didn't cost, or SFC right here, Special Financing. They didn't have a upfront fee initially, but they did have an approval process. With Shy-Fi and special financing, you need to be doing anywhere between $100,000 to $200,000 a month in gross revenue to be able to get approved for these. But this one also has a tier 4, tier 5 program, which means you can get people with very low credit scores approved. And then they have a 30-day recourse window versus a 60-day recourse window that special financing has, and they have better APRs. It just kind of depends on what you're doing. If you're another, like in real estate, contracting, landscaping, medical, you will qualify for a lot better options than these. A lot of these will be, you can utilize them for, your services as well, but these will get you approved even if you're a coach or high tickets consultant, because those are the harder ones that a lot of these companies don't want to work with, because it's a lot more risk to the financing partner than it is to you because of the default rate on those, right? Because they're basically trusting that you're going to provide the services. But honestly, if you guys implement any of these portions into your system, the qualification systems, these financing options, it's going to drastically increase the amount of cash collected you guys are getting on sales calls. If you guys have any questions or want more information on all these options, I'm not affiliated with any of you guys. I have utilized every single one of these options that I've basically put in here. So I will vouch for any of them. But again, like I said, this is all information for you guys to take and implement into your business at the end of the day. With that being said, guys, I will catch you all in the next video.